are now live. Okay. Hey, everyone. We are doing something a little bit different. The live is starting. I'm going to get Henry in here. Let's see. Let me add. As you are joining, please let me know if you can hear me. That's what I run into on here. Sometimes people cannot hear me the first time. Can you hear me? My little mic is not showing up. So, can you go on, Ryan? Okay, I can see. And I just let Henry know that we are going live. Hey, everyone, as you join, if you can hear me, let me know. If you can't, let me know. Huh? Great. We are waiting for my co-host, Henry Lucas, to join us. How are you guys doing this afternoon? We are doing something a little bit different. We are not going to let technical difficulties with our streaming app stop us from having these conversations. So please share with all your friends as you join that we are going live from our Instagram page here at Kentucky Harm Reduction Coalition. So I'm so glad you guys are able to join us this afternoon for a great conversation. Oh, it looks like Henry is here. Adding Henry to our live.
Hey, one thing's for sure, Shrita. We're going to pivot.
We are going to pivot, right? I'm going to turn I hope my volume is up louder. Turn my volume up.
Yeah, I can hear you pretty good. Yeah.
Good.
Well, it's good to see you. I like your hat.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's unfortunate that we couldn't be on our regular platform, but also we live in a day and age where we just have access to so many resources and can really pivot and stay light on our feet and make any adjustments, which I think is necessary in a climate and culture that we're in today. Plus,
Absolutely.
I like this filter a little bit better though than what we're using.
I kind of thought about that too. I was like, oh, this is a nice filter. Check the eyebrow, but it's too much. It's got me looking at myself.
Well, we're live.
Well, I'm glad.
Well, we're live now. So,
Yes, we are.
um, so welcome. We've got a great show planned today. We've got just such a incredible and much needed topic. Talking about youth, talking about prevention, looking at ways that we can support and empower the next wave of leaders and civilians in our communities, in our country. Um, but first, before we get there, did you have fun at my party on Saturday?
Yes, I did. I had such a good time. I was connecting with so many people. It felt
Yeah,
really good. I really like these. I kept calling it triangle music, the wind chimes. I can't remember which one those were, but oh my God, it was just a breath of fresh air that needed to happen.
yeah.
It really did. And connecting with people I haven't gotten to connect with in a while in person. Amanda was so cool to. I haven't seen her in years. Like, well, we saw each other at the conference that one time, but like we haven't sat down like this. This was really good. So I am I'm really excited about some things that are going to be birthed from your party, your birthday party.
Yeah, yeah. It was good to be loved, to feel love,
Yeah.
to really share love.
I know. Did you like your gift? You guys, Henry said I got him gifts that I would like.
Yeah, sometimes Sharita has inside jokes with herself, and she the only one that really be laughing about it.
I did. I was laughing the whole time. You just like it was. It was inside jokes for
Yeah,
me.
I did. I love the gift. Thank you very much. The gift, well, the couple gifts really honored, knowingly or unknowingly, where I'm at in my journey in life, and I just really appreciate the subtle wisdom that I can use. And also shout out to Gemini season and you acknowledging that with your beautiful gift. I love the color. Um, so thank you for that.
Cool.
Well, let's pivot. So again, welcome, Bam. You know,
Bam.
by any means, that's what we're doing here. If you're just now joining and you're wondering why, well, we had some technical issues, and I'll own a piece of that. And so last minute, we decided to bring it on Instagram.
Mhm.
At some point this week, we will have this recorded and on all of our platforms,
Yeah.
Spotify, YouTube, Facebook. Please go to kyhrc.org, find a way to donate money, find a way to donate time, energy, or other resources that you have access to. We are a nonprofit, and we believe if you want to see some of the work we've done, just look at the recent a significant decrease in fatal overdose
Yeah.
deaths. We're going to say that our organization, other folks that do harm reduction, was a large reason for that impact. You can hear more about that specifically if you just go again to our Spotify, YouTube, and watch us, listen to us, and subscribe, please, so we can get the word out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, so thank you all for joining us today. Henry and I are ready to have a really I think all of our conversations are raw and necessary, but I mean, now we are talking about a group of people who rarely get space, right? And we'll have some surprises bringing some of these folks on, but we're talking about youth, you all, youth and prevention that is beyond punishment, right? So first, Henry, can we just like bring everybody up to speed? Why is it important and it's urgent for us to center youth right now? And I'm going to grab my water. I'm going to grab my water real quick while you share why is it important.
I think kids are important, right? Like our youth, just like our elders, youth are important. They hold significant value in our society. Our youth, at some point, will be our elders, and,
Mhm.
and there's a lot that happens in our youth in what we're exposed to, what we're susceptible to. Really important developmental, milestones, socio emotional development, looking at factors like peer influence. Um, the first 3 to 4 years, and then you go to the first 7 years, first 10 years are some of the most important years of our life. And we haven't done the best job overall in the country at not just taking care of our youth, but preparing our youth, investing into our youth. And that those opportunities are really only granted to still a select few.
Yeah.
Um, I might say those kids or those youth that have access to privilege, or might be privileged in some respect. But what we're looking at here today, and some of the weeks to follow, is all youth,
Right.
right? Across all developmental lifespans of youth and childhood and adolescence. And what does that actually really mean for prevention? And what does prevention really mean? And how the heck does you see what I just did? I cuss like a sailor, but when we start talking about kids, I start abbreviating.
Start changing your
Yeah.
language.
But how does what we do, like, how does harm reduction a part of youth?
Right.
Like prevention, how can we use harm reduction to empower and to lead our youth through this radical lens of experiencing the world? And I'm not really sure of an answer on that, but those are some of the things that we're really set to unpack today over the next hour and 10 minutes.
Right. Absolutely. Thank you for that introduction. Um, so as we dive into this, I would love for you to share this stream, you all. Get people to tune in. A lot of you all are right now sitting around in rooms creating programs. You're creating spaces that are going to be for youth, right? You probably are leading those spaces. You may know people who lead those spaces. We have legislators, policymakers, people who lead in making and creating the policies that are centered around youth. We have community organizations. So as you are watching, think about those folks. And since we're on Instagram, just go down to that little corner where they have the little, looks like an airplane, and send this live to those folks. Send it to your friends. Get them to join in and lean into this conversation as we really share how instrumental harm reduction and leading from a lens of harm reduction really can be when we're talking about creating spaces for you, right? So you're going to like, share this stream. You're going to go on your Facebook and tell all our Facebookers to come over here to Instagram, right? You're going to tell them we're here today. Don't forget, you're going to subscribe to us too so that we can start going live on YouTube. If we want to be able to expand our audience, we have to get up to 50 subscribers. So let's get up there, because we wanted to pivot to YouTube, and that would have been a great platform to use, but we need you in your support. All right? First thing is, like Henry said, we can't leave the youth out, because all of us, Henry, you agree, all of us are one day gonna leave this earth, right? This shell won't be here anymore. Like, we're all going.
Yeah, and we're all going, but we also right now is like, so who's the vulnerable population, right? We look at substance use, and we look at like age, the most at risk and the most vulnerable age that's trending sort of negatively is going to be our youth.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, alcohol use is down, but marijuana, cannabis use, and all varieties is up somewhat significantly. across our youth, primarily with teenagers and adolescents. And what we know is that if we can stop or slow a child or teenager, a youth substance use until they're about 18 years old, they are 7 times less likely to develop a substance use disorder into early or middle adulthood. So
Right.
we're talking about substances, primarily around prevention, but we can't talk about prevention and impact and what it does for the neurochemistry in the brain also without including the impact that technology and screens also
Mm-hmm.
have on our youth. So I think
Yeah.
it's important. I think it's important to also share that because there are some teens, there are youth that aren't using substances
Right.
recreationally because of their compulsive screen use. They are still more likely to become dependent on alcohol, dependent on drugs, dependent on
Mm-hmm.
other process addictions, what we call in early, in middle adulthood. So that's also an important thing that we've got to track.
I know, and I think you started really talking about that. It's been over 5 and 6 years ago, Henry, that you really started trying to point that out to a lot of us in this field of substance use. Like, hey, we're not paying attention to this. I recall that, and I think right before the pandemic, maybe we had a discussion, and then you started playing around with screen time and removing it, and I was like, wow, it's like you were doing your own little study, I guess. That's what it looked like on the outside, but I remember you having this conversation years ago. This wasn't something that just started, but what it makes me think about is going into our first point. This is honestly, Henry, that focus on the just say no idea, talking about the war on drugs, the failed war on drugs. That's one of the issues. We focus so much on the substance, on chemical, that is really difficult. I just said that you brought this up years ago. Years ago. You brought it up, honestly, before I started seeing people journal about dependency and addiction and the screen. Like you were just talking about it, like, wait a minute, there's this thing happening. Like, we're not paying attention to it, but no one really wanted to talk about it. It's like, well, we're not talking about dependency. And you're like, no, it's the same part of the brain. It's triggering the same thing. And now everybody's here, right? They're like, wait a minute, we all know. Let's look at the science behind this. That is one of the problems with the war on drugs is that it focused on just substance. I feel like in harm reduction, it allows me to also it allows me to also now look at all of those things to say this is harmful that you're spending my son you're spending 6 hours straight on just the screen like you won't even move to use the restroom. You won't. It's like now I can see it because I'm looking at it from the lens of what is creating the harm. Is this behavior creating the harm?
Ain't nobody smoking a damn cigarette for 6 hours straight. I've been in some shady places 6 hours straight, but we wasn't using for no
The
6 hours
6 hours
straight.
straight. Like to even me, when you say that, Harry, I will be on my phone on the weekend, and hours will go by. So you're like thinking about a youth's brain, though.
Oh, it's very easily shaped and malleable. It's easily manipulated and contorted and influenced, you know. And I think about my experience. I was I was about 9
Mm-hmm.
or 10 years old the first time that I got drunk. I was 12 years old the first time that I used marijuana. I was 14 years old the first time that I used OxyContin.
Mm-hmm.
And by the time I was 15, um, I was full blown drug user, methamphetamine amphetamines, cocaine, alcohol, marijuana every day, um, and OxyContin used pretty regularly. It became daily right around maybe 16, about 16, 17 years old. I'm using, OxyContin every day. And it's interesting because for something to become a problem, I don't want to say an addiction, for something to become a problematic use, though, it needs three components.
Mm-hmm.
It needs accessibility, availability, and anonymity.
Mm.
And what I'm seeing, just in a little bit of counseling I've done in the last few years with teen clients, we have clients, teenagers, that are using a THC product like a THC vape
Mm-hmm.
that have never laid eyes on actual cannabis, have
Wow.
never smoked, cannabis,
Mm.
only through vape. But I remember being a kid, the whole process of, smoking and who's got the Visine
Right.
and
Right.
who's got the Bath and Body Works, body spray or whatever it is that we're using,
To
hair
cover
off
the cover.
or a cucumber melon or whatever the heck that. But as problematic as it was for me, the problem today is it goes relatively unnoticed, and that I've had clients that when it's time for bed, they will literally lay in their bed while their parents are in the other room using a THC vape, which goes mostly unnoticed
Right.
for hours. And then what happens, they're not sleeping, they're not necessarily eating. It can lead to psychosis. Uh,
Yeah.
Teenagers with that level of potency, with that level of frequency, and just really becomes much more problematic. But because there's stigma, see, the kid's not going to go to that psychologist and say that they're ripping, the vape pen
Mm-hmm.
every, right? That they're going to come up with it's anxiety or it's depression or I can't keep up the school or it's ADHD.
Right.
So now the problem's missed. Sometimes there's a medication that's given out to address a diagnosis that that mimics what regular cannabis use for a teenager suggests,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so when we talk about our youth at any age, our children, our teens, right, our young men and our young women, we can't talk about it without prevention, and we can't talk about prevention without harm reduction.
Exactly. That was such a cool dive you took us through to really take a very good look. And I'm excited for parents to hear it because I think, you know, again, looking at what we're battling up against, the philosophy of fear. I'm gonna scare you. Um, Parents are put in this weird space of how do I support my kid who's doing something bad? They're just acting out. I don't understand what's going on with them. Then you have the school system who has a new policy that's going to be starting. Hopefully, it gets pushed back. There are some organizers pushing back on it, but the phone policy. So we're going to eliminate the screen time and the distraction because see that's a bad thing, Henry. Is they're not focused. They're not doing what they're supposed to do in class. So we're just going to make all kids take their phone. They can't have a phone in school. Now it's a punitive response to it. The same thing with the war on drugs. The policies in schools are, one time you're caught, you could get detention. The next time you could get expulsion. So it's this pathway to increase punishment, which is exactly what you said. I'm not going to talk to someone in the school because I'm going to get in trouble. I can't have this conversation about what's happening because I'm going to get in trouble. Or we don't talk about DCBS, Department of Children and Family Services, who will then come in. The kids know this. So now we have this complete disconnect and then everyone comes in and says, well, what we have to do overdose prevention. And I'm like, well, we're not going to truly find out. Like, I feel like those numbers of the data that is collected on youth that admit to substance use it's gonna be skewed. Why? A lot of kids are not admitting to their real use. Like they're not. So you come back and say, this is up and this is down. And I'm like, I can't take that. I have to go to the high school, like I went to Shawnee, and be boots on the ground and actively see, whoa, you got hallways that smell like weed. Like the whole hallway, the whole bathroom smell like it. Like I don't know what's happening here. You're not gonna get the actual data because we still have a punitive response. So not jail, but it aligns with jail. And you just shared, what it looks like. But I guess you can continue to talk if you have anything else, Henry, about the consequences that you see being in mental health care as well and substance use. The consequences of these punitive responses, like it sounds like you're getting more information in those sessions, but
Well,
how is this helping?
well, developmentally, kids, youth are explorative.
Mm-hmm.
They're curious, right? And the way that the human mind works, if you tell me not to do something, I'm,
Mm.
I'm going to do it. It's just the way the mind works. And I just, and I'm getting to be an old man. I'm not going to disclose my age on here. If you were, at my party a few days ago, like no, and you just keep that to yourself. But you really start to add in not just like the way the mind works, but where people are at developmentally,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so the biggest thing is always with all people who use drugs is informed consent and safety.
Mm.
Because that's the thing that we're really trying to foster here with our kids when it comes to prevention
Exactly.
is safety,
Yeah.
right? Like safety is prevention. And when you say, just say no or, don't have sex, teens specifically are highly impulsive.
Mm-hmm.
Most decisions that they make is based off two things. Is it fun? And are my people going to be there?
Right.
Right? Because we always make decisions based off our values. And for a kid, and we're talking about teens primarily right now, their highest values are having fun and being with their friends.
Right.
Right? And we've seen in the last few years, not just screen time, not just cannabis use, like we've seen good kids from our community, all kinds of kids. We've seen them die
Yeah.
from fentanyl overdose.
Yeah.
That have no history of using fentanyl, right? And so there's this whole other thing because kids are curious and they want to try things and see what their music's talking about, see what their movies are talking about, see what their parents, their communities, and their friends are talking about. They they're going to succumb to those pressures, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not just from our peers; it's coming from a lot of different places, right? And so they're going to try a pill because someone said it was a Xanax or it was a Valium or it was a Dilaudid or hydromorphone or something. They're going to try that, but what they don't know is that is a designer pill that's
Right.
been pressed precisely to look like a prescription
Right.
drug. But the problem with that is this designer drug has been contaminated with fentanyl, and you take a child who doesn't use substances really, maybe other than in an explorative capacity, it will kill them
Right.
pretty instantly.
Right.
That's the thing, right? It's
Yeah.
so elusive and it's so anonymous that it's almost like what we're up against in a way is a shape shifting, almost invisible thing that we can't quite identify because it's always
Right.
moving.
Right.
Makes it much more difficult, but it really starts not in the schools. It don't start in the schools. We can't rely on our schools anymore. We know
Of
that.
course.
Schools are, um, they've just become something else that they weren't necessarily intended to be. This work really starts at home, and this work really starts between families, right? And
Mm-hmm.
connecting. If you have a child, and connecting with the parents and the families of your children's friends to build a much more safe and to build a much more secure and probably more importantly than the school, building a much more reliable network.
Yeah. Yeah. This is the beauty, you all, of harm reduction. Just want to remind you, share and like this stream. Share with your friends. Share with your neighbors. Share with your colleagues. This is a really good conversation, especially if you're working on prevention programs with you. Um,
And let me just say this. We're normally not on this platform. We're normally
oh yeah,
recording a podcast platform that we meet every other week. You can catch us live on that. StreamYard. Also, is it StreamYard or
yeah,
what is it?
it's StreamYard.
We're also on all major platforms. So please look us out, check us out, and like, share, subscribe. Tell everybody that you can about this. This is all relevant and important stuff that we talk about. So,
Absolutely. Thank you. It's what we do in harm reduction. When you're talking about all of those, it's educational points. A lot of people just don't know this stuff. If you don't work in this, if you don't live this field, then you just don't know all of that information. I found that is the prevention. In harm reduction, we spend time educating. What I found that was really beautiful, Henry, when I did a youth prevention program with the organization Beautiful as You Are, they're Baya. They have a brick and mortar right across the river in New Albany, Indiana, but Tish does work over here in Jefferson County and with JCPS. I do a prevention program, and the way that I like to do prevention for all of those that know is because I lean into the curiosity. Is I present a table that looks like the drugs and alcohol, everything. Most kids, they're always trying to figure out what I did to make these things. They're like, that's oregano, that's this. But what happens is, right, because they're always trying to guess. And then the alcohol is always a fun topic because they're trying to see if it's apple juice, if it's some type of juice, if it's water, because it's light. So sometimes I switch it up. But it starts a conversation. And then at the top of that prevention class, they walk around the table and they're usually listening to songs that are layered with substance use. They're listening to their music, so they're singing about it. And what is happening during that moment is you're listening to them talk about what they know on that table. You find out who has seen syringes, who knows what those syringes are for. You found out how many kids know about cocaine and crack or never seen, like you said, cannabis. You find out so much or new language on the street that youth are using as code words. It it goes into the idea of there's a curiosity piece in here that we've all had when we were youth. The next part of this is it's the education around what these substances do, what they are. And in this class, there's one specific group I did. Henry, I kid you not, I had youth pulling out their phone. They wanted to see what kind of medications they were prescribed. They were like, wait a minute. So I take this one and I said, hey, you don't have to tell us what medications you take, right? That's your HIPAA, then explaining HIPAA with private information, what you don't have to disclose. But these young people were pulling out their phones, looking up side effects because we were talking about everything. They were like, wait a minute, I take this. I was wondering why I get a headache every now and then. You guys, education allows people in general to make better choices. It just does, because now it's an informed choice. You can still decide you want to take something. But how cool is it to watch the young men were learning more about how, cannabis and abuse of it, long-term use, starting at an early age, can impact them having children later. That it could potentially impact that. Like, to see a youth go, wait a minute, what? What do you mean by that? Some of them challenge it because they'll say, well, my so-and-so had 5 kids, but it's the idea that people know education is the key.
Well, but the wires get crossed because a school, a teacher, a principal, a school counselor will make a recommendation for a kid to go get evaluated for ADHD and be put on a stimulant, Adderall, which is only one molecule away from being what methamphetamines is. We'll do that.
Right.
But we won't educate that child about the medication they're on,
no.
or we won't educate that child about other substances that are relevant to their age or relevant to their demographic or relevant to the location that the school is in. And it just doesn't make any sense. And so I started to think as you were talking about my son, who's 20 months old, and he's cute. He looked like his old man, but that's here nor there. But he's getting into everything.
Yeah.
Because he's curious, right? And so in our chemical cabinet where we keep all our cleaning supplies, we had to put lock on it.
Right.
Well, what is that? Well, that's harm reduction.
Right.
That's prevention. It works when there's an immediate toxic threat.
Yes.
But what that doesn't show is how to develop a relationship, or how to develop boundaries, or how to develop a sense of self as it relates to the thing that is challenging.
That's true.
That's why taking screens away don't work. That's why saying no doesn't work.
Right.
Because it doesn't allow for the healthy development of the kid or of the teen, right? Because they're still going to do what it is that they're going to do.
Yeah.
And so just saying no is a great option. One option, though, among many other options in prevention. Yeah. But we can't treat every social situation, or we can't treat every developmental challenge. Just say no.
Right.
So there's a couple of thoughts that I wanted to share. I think we need a range of solutions.
I think so too, and I think that the biggest thing is having youth involved. That's where we start. Again, a harm reduction foundational principle is that people who are impacted should be at the table of decision making. They should be right there when it comes to talking about it. And that's another space where I think it's unfortunate. We have youth programs that are still led by adults who were former youth. Like, it's like, you guys, we got youth, and not to knock them, because I get it. But at the same time, it's so gaslighting, because it's like the youth need this. I go to meetings and I see nothing but adults. Everyone's over 30. And I'm like, you guys, we're missing the mark, and for marginalized communities of color, I like to remind people, I can say to Black people, how did you feel when you learned that there was a meeting about your community and nobody was at that table? The people who are impacted should be at the table of decision making. Absolutely. It is looking at that. So I think about a lot of people, I don't know, Henry, I think as adults, we have to own our fear. I think a lot of that is fear about having the youth come. And also, it's the idea that they don't know. If we're honest, there's people who just believe, well, they don't know what they need. I think that has a lot to do with it too. That's the truth. What else do you think it is, Henry, that why people won't bring youth to the table to create these programs or to talk about them? Because I'm going to share about one that we're supporting. But what else do you think it is? Or is that it? Is it just they don't think youth have we turned into some of the older folks that we've run into that told us we didn't know what we were doing?
Look.
Have we turned into that?
Okay, Auntie. Just start calling me Unc, okay?
Right, because I think we have arrived.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot at play here, and some of it could be the intention of protecting our youth. But it would make sense that if collectively in my family, in my house, as the husband and as the dad, I just make all the decisions. I don't even really got to consult with my wife to make most decisions. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so, like, if that's the paradigm that we've been living in, where mom or dad or both or whoever the caregivers sort of rule with the authoritative sort of iron fist, and kids don't have a voice, kids don't have a say, quit being so emotional. You always got something to say about something, like, and so if their sense of self is not honored, if it's not respected in the household, what we're going to get is a reflection of that in the boardrooms. What we're going to get is a reflection of that at the state capitol, at all of these places, right? And so it's knowing that we all have gifts and we all have lived experience, but it's so important that anytime we're discussing any challenge, any issue, any solution, that we have diversity of all people that are involved at the table.
Absolutely.
Right? So I think what we're seeing is really a smaller snapshot of what it's actually like in the average home, in America.
Wow.
It makes sense, right?
It does. And as I think about it, I'm like, I'm so glad that KYHRC was given the opportunity, and which means myself to moderate Kentucky Harm Reduction Summit's first youth panel. Henry, do you know why? I was told by the leadership why they chose us. Because we're going to actually let the youth talk. Like, they will be talking. The questions that are tailored from our lens are tailored for them to talk. We talked about questions because we asked them, does this even make sense? What would you ask? What would you want people to know? That was to be a participant in this, and for me to agree. I made sure I said these have to be youth from all over the state. We have youth coming from rural and urban Kentucky. 2 youth from Louisville specifically will be on this panel in June. And I'm excited about it because the youth are going to lead the discussion on what they've experienced in systems. What does it feel like? And to hear the youth, Henry, and I'm hoping that the next segment that we do in 2 weeks, we'll have a couple of those youth join us for the conversation. But having them share their answers, a couple of answers to conversations, and to hear them say, is this okay for me to say? I said, you're going to say whatever you want. Like, you saying whatever. And they're like, I can say how I really feel. To hear how scary it is to go to someone in the school and ask for help when what happened before was you were removed from the house. Like, hearing it from the youth's mouth. So this is not going to be adults sharing their story, is them sharing their living experience, Henry. It is so wonderful. And I again applaud our organization really to demonstrate that we truly make every attempt. Not to say that we always hit it right, because I'm going to share the story about why I'm so glad we got this. Our first attempt at our youth outreach program, when I went back and revisited after the program, there was a big modification I would make, Henry. Do you want to know what that was?
What's that?
I would have had youth share to help me create what those 2 days should have been like. I feel like they liked it. There's a but though. It was just what us adults thought would be great for them to know. It's so easy, Henry. That's the point of me sharing. It's so easy to go, well, they should know this. And then we tap into our childhood. And let's not talk about tapping into our unhealed childhood. Because now we're saying, I'm going to share with everything I wish I knew that I knew I had. Now I'm coming from trauma, right? No. So I said with this one, before we create questions, Phoebe, before we do this, we're going to sit with them. We need to hear them. We need to know. I was like, Phoebe had a great one. But we need to know what kind of fidgets they would like on the table. Like, really saying, I'm going to lean in and stop assuming.
But how do we even know they want fidgets on the table?
Exactly. That was the question. I think it came up in the conversation. We were like, well, what do you all want? Do you want anything? It was like, I remember the conversation before the youth came into the room on this virtual space. We were like, we're going to make sure they have all kinds of drinks. And then when we got into the meeting, we were like, well, wait a minute, what do you want to drink? Like, you really have to be intentional. But I love it because it also allowed us to demonstrate that we don't always hit the mark either. We had an experience where we were like, man, we could make a modification and this is what we learned. And we're still going to tweak things and we're still going to it's not going to hit all the time, but it's not about perfection.
Well,
I want to go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say that's good experience for you coming from a non-target group, right? Because in this world, mostly adults have privilege.
Exactly.
Right? So really the gift here is that we're all really learning from each other.
That's it.
But we have to slow down long enough to allow there to be that space for things to naturally come up.
And now you are doing so good, Henry, at like guiding us through threading. I'm like, oh my God, we are really now we're going into the community and everything. I'm gonna tell you guys, we're about to hit something that can be for some communities. This might feel a little heavy because we do need to slow down. The slow down that I want to begin with is this concept of the village. There's a lot happening right now, especially when we look at urban areas like Louisville and Lexington, and we look at what is happening with our youth, the increase in violence, the mob kind of movements. We see there was just a fight at Kentucky Kingdom. About 25 youth were held there. Before that, it was another incident down at the waterfront. We have our substance use that's all apart, it's all intermingled in this space. We have a increase of youth nationally being a part of these, like, theft. And I'm like, and so many people in these communities that the youth are coming from. So we're talking about the actual communities that the youth are coming from. We have this trend of, you're being bad. The police need to come lock them up, put them down, sit them down. And I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. Village. It takes a village. What does that look like? And it's overwhelming to think about, I think. As I'm having conversations on the street with people, I'm hearing from some of our elders in the community. They're like, they don't want to listen. They don't want to listen to us. And then in this Gen X, this community that I belong to, is, I don't care anymore. They don't care, I don't care. I'm like,
Well, and I want to say something real quick. I want to interrupt. I just had this thought. So it's it's one of the characteristics of a teen is rebellion, and rebellion is actually pretty healthy,
it is.
uh, because during that stage of our development, what we're looking for is, for the first time really in our life, developmentally, we're separating ourselves from our family,
Yeah.
and so we rebel. That's what happens. We rebel because we want independence. So, and this is how rebellion shows up. They don't want to listen to us. They don't want to listen to us is actually saying we haven't been listening to them.
To them. Exactly.
So
Exactly.
if you want your children to listen to you,
You gotta listen
you have
to them.
to start by listening to them. If you want to be understood, you have to start by understanding.
Come on now, LCSW over there. That birthday was good for you.
That's right.
Hey,
I,
y'all.
I didn't think I was going to live to see 25 the rate I was going.
See? And think about what you just said. Our youth are thinking that. Like, you just said it, but think about our youth. When I did the program at Shawnee, and those youth that I work with, God love them, they sounded like they were 35, 40. They was like, well, when I was growing up, and you 15. Because there's so much that has happened. If you want the youth to listen to you, you have to listen to them. You guys, the village concept. And the thing is, I'm sharing this with you to bring it to your awareness, but we already started village concept in different ways. I want to share a way to leverage it. You you take your youth to the shops, the barber shops, the beauty shops. You have your youth in sports. There is spaces where, if we started changing the way and shifting the way that we think about things, who can have that conversation with my young person? Who can start this conversation? It's starting in those spaces. Well, that was really Henry that said it. I just repeated it, because it was cold. Yes, it was cold. Thank you, Sarah. But these spaces have a natural space of safety that people aren't really aware of. But I want to share to you that these are spaces that have been created. The barbershops, the beauty salons, they are actually hearing, similar to the bars, right, Henry? You go sit in the bartender gonna hear your story. You sitting there getting your hair cut, you're getting your hair done. There is parts of you, this is a vulnerable space. These spaces are creating the village concept. Henry, a lot of parents I've talked to are scared to begin that conversation, or don't really know how. And I'm always opening up the door. Do you have to be the person to start it? Do you directly, have you ever seen your youth actually seem to connect with someone? Next time you go around some people where your youth is engaged at, watch which adults they're connected to the most. Is it their salon? Is it their nail tech? Who is the person they seem to be having all the conversation? Or who's the adult that comes back and say, hey, I just talked to my niece about so-and-so, and they doing, can they be that person? Can they be the conduit? Can they be the person to help start that conversation? Like, that's helping people take a look at, what does this village really look like, and how can we create that?
Yeah, I want to go back to the parents though, real quick, right? As a parent, your feelings don't matter, right? Your feelings don't matter. And what happens when I don't talk to my kids about something, if I'm not talking to my children because it's a tough conversation, that's not fair to your child.
Wow.
Unless it's, not age appropriate. That's a whole nother thing. But if I'm not talking to my child about something because I'm afraid of their reaction or response, actually, I'm really afraid of my reaction or my response. And so I don't have those conversations with my children, not to really protect them from their feelings, but I don't have those conversations with my kids because I don't want to feel their feelings.
Great point.
Right? And so parents, like we also have to do better.
Yes.
And it's okay to put your feelings aside. This is not about you. Ultimately, at the end of the day, what we're talking about here is safety. We're talking about development. We're talking about a life. We're talking about, the future. And, cutting off a child's legs before they're able to walk is only going to keep them stuck in that phase for the rest of their life. And
wow.
Your child, that's on you. That's on
So
you.
what
So
do we do?
we have to get better as parents, period. I don't care what your feelings are. And we have help, we have support, we have resources out in the community, like you mentioned, barbershops, beauty salons, athletics, after school clubs, churches, synagogues, mosques, other places that we might go. Right? Think about the YMCA. Think about other organizations that might be in your community. These are all resources to help us. But see, the thing is, like, again, I have to put my feelings aside because, hey, can you talk to my kid? Right? As a parent, that's really humbling. That's really vulnerable for me to let you, as the barber or the hairdresser, know, like, hey, he's kind of messing up and he needs someone to share something real with him. That means you might see me different. I got to put my feelings aside as a parent if I want my children to maybe experience something different than what I've experienced.
I love that.
It's not about me.
I love that. It is the village concept for the parents. Yes, you need a village. You need your own village. We have learned that a lot of us are unlearning, including myself, unlearning things that I picked up from my parent that did the best they could with what they had. And now I'm learning and unlearning. There's gonna need people. And I tell people when they say, well, how do I do it? I say, well, the first time my kid was tested for HIV, yes, I have all the knowledge. I have the access. I could have sat down, and the conversation was never going to really be authentic because my kid had that wall against me anyway. She was like, you just going to keep talking to me because you're a counselor somewhere. The coolest thing I could have done was reach out to the community resource partner that I knew and said, I'm going to bring my child to this event and let my child engage with this resource. Not thinking about, well, what are they going to think about my parenting style? What are they going to think about no, because at the end of the day, I didn't want my child to be without the knowledge. When I wanted my son to have a mentor, I reached out, hey, so and Caesar Faith, my son's missing a few things that I need from male role model. I need some positive things going on. You guys, there is a lot in our community. We, again, I cannot express I can't express hard enough what Henry just shared. That was a lot, Henry, just in that moment of accountability, and it's not just, someone told me the other day, they said it's so interesting. I'm watching elders be upset about youth and say these parents, but they don't, it's like they have a disconnect between you raised the parent that birthed this youth. It's like the elders have removed, everyone is doing like this. It's like, my hands are up, and then they go, what's going on with them today? And I say, well, let's talk about it. So no, we're not saying, this is an accountability portion of it. I said it was going to be a little uncomfortable here.
Yeah. Well, let's get a little bit more uncomfortable, because I got some other stuff to
I
say
know
now that I'm getting
that's,
off.
listen.
Right. So it's not the parents' full responsibility about how we've gotten here. It's not the parent that needs to take 100% of accountability of why we've gotten here with these trends. By the way, this filter is looking really good for you, Shrita.
Oh my God! Wait a minute, but let's pause for a second. So,
Yeah.
any other day, because my skin looking real chocolate. I like this filter. Anyway, go
Yeah.
back.
Okay. Yeah. Well, um, I gotta be careful. I might catch some cavities. So, anyways, we talk about accountability. How did we get here with increased cannabis use with our teens? How did we get here with children dying from fentanyl poisoning? They've never used opiates, or maybe sporadically. It's our politicians.
Mm-hmm.
It's our lawmakers. It's our law enforcement. It's our teachers. It's our coaches.
Mm-hmm.
It's our preachers, our pastors. It's our librarians. See, we all can't say that we can contribute to a child's development
Mm-hmm.
if we can't say that without the opposite being true, that we're all also contributing to where things are at for our teens. Screen addiction, screen compulsivity is up. There's a lot of people at fault for that. You see what
Listen,
I'm saying?
yeah,
So everybody, in order for us to move forward, everybody has to own their role in a child's life. We all have significant and profound impact on all the children in our life, not just my kids, all kids.
all of them. I agree.
But we don't live that way. We don't live like that.
No, we don't. As you were talking about who all, and thinking about everyone pointing a finger at each other, I thought it was interesting. I go back to that phone thing because my daughter and my son recently graduated in the last few years, right, from high school. And I remember walking into a classroom, and one of the issues the teacher was having was the she used the phone. She had her phone open, and she was on something she shouldn't have been on. And I said, oh, she had her phone out. Well, she was like, well, they can use their phone, but they have to be reading this one thing. I said, you try to get youth, you talk about 14, 15, 16-year-olds to open their phone and only read what you told them to read on their phone at their desk away from you. I said, you trusted that they wouldn't do anything else, like turn on their music, like text with their friends. You trusted that. And now we're at a place where we're going to punish our youth and say no one can have their phone because no one can stick to this gray space that you gave. Because my thing is, harm reduction says that we're going to have structures that we do have accountability and expectation. But when you open this space and say, well, I said, well, I wouldn't have ever set up a rule like that with a person who is developmentally going to challenge this area where I didn't give real clear boundaries and expectations. Like, that's not fair. This isn't an adult. This isn't an adult, right? So I think when you say that accountability is spread far and wide, yes, everyone really needs to stop pointing the fingers at the youth who have less time on this earth. Less time on this earth, but they are the problem to their problem.
Yeah, what I would do in that class, I'd say, all right, everybody, you've got, 10 minutes. The first 5 minutes, I'm going to let you all work on this assignment. And then after that, everybody gets 5 minutes to just get on their socials to
Oh, right. Do you
friends.
know,
So let's make space for what we know is already going to happen, and it doesn't get done in secret.
Henry?
Restrictions. Restrictions are okay,
Mm-hmm.
right? But the elimination, the abstinence of something is what creates the extreme problem on the other end, right? And we'll look at we'll look at teen pregnancy, in the '90s, and we know how that went.
Exactly.
Don't have sex, okay? So they had, we had some of the highest rates of teen pregnancy in the '90s during that administration's attempt to actually decrease those numbers. So we know that like permanent abstinence for teens don't work because they will find a way to explore and experiment with what we're telling them not to do, not because they're bad, not because they're renegades, but because their brain is developing, and developmentally they are explorative by nature, and we should honor that. Because if we cut that off, then they grow up and they grow up and they're not creative, they're not explorative, they're not willing to take healthy risks, they don't have
Mm-hmm.
trust in themselves and in their decision making, so they're always looking for somebody else to make the decision for them. And so we're just really perpetuating a deeper societal impact on the development of our young people. There's a
Absolutely.
lot to learn here from our kids.
You know, we could talk about this all day because this is a space that a lot of people are leaning into conversation. I want to, as we prepare to close out, I love these rapid fire questions because it's talking about the lies. The first one, as you were saying, the things we're told, and this is supposed to work, and it didn't. It did the absolute opposite. Do you know a prevention lie you were told growing up? I got mine if you want me to say it first.
A prevention lie.
Yeah, something that was used for prevention that was turned out to be a lie. I got two,
Oh, I
but
got one. I remember the TV commercials when they would fry the egg. This is your brain on drugs.
this
No, it
is
ain't.
your brain. This is your brain,
That's not, and that had me terrified.
right?
I remember using marijuana as a very curious teenager and thinking, this is how I'm going to go out. That was a.
Listen, okay. I have. I used to think that walking up and down the street that there was gonna be some big, massive drug dealers, like black ones, standing on the corners. They were gonna be asking me if I wanted drugs, and they were gonna give them to me for free. And that was gonna be my starter. Not one person asked me to do drugs for like they were gonna give it to me for free. Like not one through my childhood. The other thing is, I, the commercials, because there was a lot of commercials, the Dare and the one where the drug dealer turned into the big lizard looking scary person. I thought that that's what they were going to look like. I thought that someone was every group that I would walk past too. I didn't care what they would dress like. Guys, I would be like, oh my God, it's going to happen. It's going to, it's going to happen. They're going to ask me. And it didn't happen. I think I couldn't remember that next one, but that was the one that stuck out the most. The commercial of the celebrities asking where the kids were, where your kids were at 9 o'clock, and that I was going to get kidnapped when it was dark. That was prevention too. So if it turned dark, mean, we did the street light things, but I swear the only way to prevent being kidnapped was I had to be in my mom's house by 9 o'clock. I would be kidnapped, because that prevention commercial was like scary. Everything was like fear, like you better stop, you better stop.
But what they don't say is that, like, most, sexual abuse for a child occurs to somebody that's in the family or close to the family.
Close to them, right? They didn't prepare you for the people who were going to be sitting right at your dinner table, yeah. Or how to even engage. Like, oh my God! So one, harm reduction. Truth we wish every youth knew. What's a harm reduction truth? Every youth knew. I think the one that, while you're thinking, I think the one that really resonates with me, and we practice a lot here, is all around information. Learn about what it is that you want to do, and you will make a more informed decision for yourself. Like, it's very broad, but I feel like it's the one that if every youth could learn.
Yeah, the best decision is an informed decision.
That's like a harm reduction basic. Yeah. What's the one message that you would send to funders and policymakers? I think you got like a list of them.
Are y'all tired of hurting these kids yet? Are y'all ready to start using our resources and start using our money and start using our expertise to really develop the next wave of leaders and entrepreneurs and innovators for this, what you call, wonderful country we living in? That's what I would say. That's what I would say to them.
Well, I feel like I would have to echo. I know, right? I see Glossy Goblin said, I think one harm reduction truth I wish youth knew was how helpful it is to find a trusted adult to talk to. It can be hard for youth to determine that, though. Yes, it can be. It can be. That's why we kind of highlighted a few of those spaces that they already occupy. Those are trusted, but sometimes you need someone to say. I know for my son, when he's dealing with things that he really don't want to talk to his mom, who's a woman who may not understand, or because he feels a sense of needing to protect me from certain things, and maybe not having his father around at certain times, I would encourage him to talk to the men that I have seen that he's connected to. Sometimes they just need the reminder that, hey, I noticed that you talk to so-and-so a lot. You think that would be a good person. I found out later in life that actually Malik has kept conversations going with folks that, like, I don't go to the same church no more, and they still continue to talk because I threw it out as a suggestion because of what I observed. So for parents or anyone else watching that, that's just one way to find that other adult in your youth life, is looking at who's around.
Can I ask? Let me rapid fire a question.
Okay.
Not necessarily who. When you think about the adults, when you think about the adults in your life, when you were a kid, when you were a teen, a young woman, what is it, as you look back, what is it that had the greatest impact on your development and becoming, this version of yourself today?
I will have to say, and to this day, and you might have caught this episode, but my mentor, who's a director and an author, a screen playwright, he's a playwright, Renako Jahi. And I know you said I didn't have to name him, but as soon as you started talking about impact and my village, and I started looking around my village and my Rolodex. Mr. Jahi, I grew up in theater, right? And so the impact of having someone who critiques you a lot when you show up. But one thing I loved is before we would start rehearsals and before we would get involved, it was always this education. He taught about our history and who we are as a people. And we were youth. So you're talking about people like Kel Mitchell from Keenan and Kel, right? You're talking about Jennifer Hudson, who he still mentors, people who are doing things common, people who are doing things in life. He started our theater, like it didn't go into, okay, let's talk about, our voice and dance. Even in dance classes at ETA Theater on the south side of Chicago, it was education about who we were. Teaching us not about the traditional Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, about people that we wouldn't have otherwise known about. And then building up the confidence to ask questions, to not be afraid. You couldn't just, if Mr. Jahi stopped the whole rehearsal and looked at you and said, why did you do that move that way? You couldn't just go, I don't know. He would say, no, you're going to tell me exactly why. It matters why you move that way. It's your thought, your idea. And it was direct like that. So you'd be like, oh my God. So you probably could pick up where I got some of that from. He's like, no, you're going to say exactly why you did it. And he helps coach you through that. And then he has you redo it. And if it was wrong, he'll tell you that was pretty fucked up. And he'll say, do it over, right? But you felt like you could say anything. So a lot of us would show up in school and we would speak our minds. We show up in life. We speak up. We say what we feel. We take ownership of our feelings. We also take the consequences of our actions. I can't imagine not having Mr. Jahi in my life to this day. Thank you for asking that.
Yeah, I think that's important that we in this space, like in prevention, as parents, as adults, as leaders of the community, like we don't have to look far and wide to see who or what or how things have impacted us.
Wow.
Because that doesn't change. It might be a different era. It might be a different, generation that we're talking about. But like when it comes to like the human need, that hasn't changed for many years. And so there's a young person out there right now that needs what it is that you experienced. And
Wow.
the same's true for me, and it's our personal responsibility to make sure that we are pulling people up with us.
Yeah.
That we are inspiring, other people. And we don't quite know who or where that opportunity is going to come, but let's just guarantee that we're going to have someone that's looking to us to model and to mentor directly or indirectly things that will last with them throughout their entire lifetime.
Listen, you know what, this segment, for us to have to pivot, it has been, I think when you're talking about youth, just like being engaged with them, it energizes. I think it was energizing conversation. Listen, you guys, we are coming to the last few minutes. We have a call to action. Do not write another grant, another bill. I want to challenge you, legislators, without talking to the young people first. Listen, don't create another program. It is not, you're not committed to your mission of creating something for the youth if they're not involved. If you're truly about healing, about safety first, or as our AG's office, the slogan is better without it. If we are saying better without it, then who at the table is acknowledging that slogan really fits the youth? Who is better without it? Who even came up with that? Or is it just like the just say no? Because it sounds like it. So we want you to commit to it. Commit to doing the work. Or like Henry asked, you know, are you just going to be okay with hurting, continuing to hurt our youth? Because that's what's happening. Follow and support youth-led orgs and their voices. There's a lot of youth-led organizations out here. If you are a young person group, if you are a youth-led organization, look around the table and see how many people are 25 and under. Are they really youth-led, right? Be a part of that. I'm going to do it as a new district chair, legislative district chair. My role is to find younger people in our district to be actively involved in these precincts and elections. I can't do that in my 40s talking about I'm going to find someone in my same age group. It's bringing in youth, having their voice be a part, actively engaged, listening to them. That last slogan, Henry, if you want the youth to listen to you, you
have to listen to the youth.
that's it. I think we had time, Henry.
Thank you for joining us, and thank you for allowing us to pivot. We appreciate your support. Please check us out, kytrc.org, for monetary, energetic, material-based donation. We appreciate any support, energy that we could exchange. Also, check us out on all streaming platforms for this episode and other episodes of By Any Means. We'll see y'all. It was good to be with you, sis.
Good to be with you too. Talk to you
Okay.
soon.
Take care.
All right.